10 points as well. A House and Senate conference is the next stop for financial regulation reform now that the Senate has passed its version of the bill. Delaware Democratic Senator Ted Kaufman joins us right now to talk more about this. And, Senator, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, Becky, thanks for having me.
You said that in your statement that you are disappointed we didn't see stronger legislation passed.
Yeah, no, I am disappointed. It was a hard vote for me. As you know, for months now, I've been talking about the fact that, you know, we have to do prevention. We have to do something about preventing these very large banks getting into trouble. It's too late when you get to the end of the road, like what's going on now in Greece. You got to get in and do more prevention. And so what I want to do, I want to have in the legislation things that basically said you had to control leverage and capital for major banks, that I wanted to say that banks, commercial banks, couldn't be involved in proprietary trading. I said what I wanted to do was kind of go back to what we had in Glass-Steagall that worked for us for 60 years, which said you couldn't be a commercial bank and investment bank under the same roof, because commercial banking should be kind of a low risk and maybe a low return business, and investment banking has always been a high return business, but it's a high risk business, and the taxpayers, because of FDIC insurance, which was in Glass-Steagall, really has to guarantee the bank, and therefore that's how we get in trouble. So I really was for having it in the legislation for generations, like we did in 1933 after the 1929 crash. Clearly, the will of the Senate was not to do that.
Although it does still have some very tough language that was inserted by Senator Lincoln, just in terms of whether they can do this or not. Do you think that will survive in this conference or not?
Well,
because the House bill does not have that.
Yeah, I don't know, Becky. I mean, the way the conference works, as you well know, is there can never be a bill that becomes law that doesn't pass both the House and Senate in identical language. So what you have to do is you have to take the Senate, put together some members, and meet with some House members, and they've got to wrangle out a piece of legislation which then has to go back to the House and Senate. Now, in the Senate, it has to have 60 votes because what will probably happen is the Republicans would filibuster it. So we'd have to have 60 votes. So there isn't a lot of wiggle room in the conference in terms of changing what's in the Senate bill. However, when I first started in this, when I was on staff in the 70s, you had to kind of operate between what the House bill was here and the Senate bill. It had to be between those two things. But in recent years, people have gone beyond that and put other things into the bill. So you never know for sure what's going to be in a conference.
But even the language as it exists, if that survives, it has a lot of the Wall Street firms very concerned, the big banks, about what that would mean if they had to spin off their derivatives desks.
Well, the point is that but the point is derivatives. I mean, good Lord, we just went through this horrible thing with derivatives. We now have derivatives. I know Goldman Sachs has a bank with $91 billion worth of capital and $1 trillion worth of derivatives. We've seen what the meltdown went on because of derivatives. So we need something like Senator Lincoln's proposed to deal with the derivatives, and we'll see what happens in the conference. I mean, I hope very much they remain strong on that.
Although, Senator, I'm sure you've heard those who say in conference, people are going to come to the realization that it's impossible to enforce this globally, right? The business will go overseas.
Sure.
The language will die as soon as they find someone to take that blame. You believe that?
No, I don't. I don't. I think that what we have to do is worry about the American taxpayers right now. I do not believe business will go overseas. I think this is highly overstated. There's a wonderful report by a man named Andrew Haldane out of the United Kingdom. He's on charge of their finance council for the Bank of England. He points out that the economies of scale for banks stop at about $100 billion. There have been repeated studies to demonstrate this. So I think, is this a concern? Yes, it's always a concern. But many times this is raised. We have to be concerned about American taxpayers not going through what we just went through. We could have this argument 2 or 3 years ago when people could say, well, we really shouldn't control anything and just let the market. I'm a market guy. I believe in the market. I get in this because of the credibility of markets. I think that's important. What we did during this period has practically destroyed U.S. markets. And if something happens again, we're going to be in real trouble. So we've got to be worried about the credibility of our markets and what's happening in the United States. I'm a globalist. I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee. I believe in international trade. I think that's really important. But we have to be focused like a laser to make sure we never do again what happened just this last time.
Wouldn't that have included, I'm just going to read quickly from the Journal, that the Senate Republicans that went along with you know perfectly well that government housing policies were the principal cause of the financial crisis. And the bill does nothing to address Fannie and Freddie, which will end up costing the taxpayer far more than TARP. Didn't wait till mid-December for the commission to come back that you appointed and had no hearings on any of the key provisions.
No, I totally agree with you. We have to deal with Fannie And Freddie, we also have to deal with high-frequency trading. We also have to deal with abusive short selling.
Why didn't we, though? I don't understand why Fannie and Freddie aren't there. The narrative becomes that it wasn't Congress's fault, that it was Wall Street's fault.
No, by the way, let me tell you, I'm on the record as saying clearly it was Congress's fault. Clearly, well, look, we repealed Glass-Steagall. Yeah. I mean, we did. We helped. We helped stop regulating of derivatives. Surely Congress was at fault, and surely Congress didn't do its oversight. But to blame it on just the housing market as being the problem, the housing market just happened. Go and look at the hearings. We had 4 days of hearings on what went on in Washington Mutual. That was not the Congress. Liar loans, stated income loans at Washington Mutual, 90% of their home equity loans were stated income loans. That was not the Congress. Rating agencies that rated stocks at AAA, half of which became junk. This was a problem with systemic.
Yeah, but none of that is included in this legislation either.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, there are things in this to control the legislation. First,
what about the idea of focusing on some of the mortgage brokers out there? I mean, that's...
Yeah, by the way, by the way, that legislation passed last year. I was one of the key sponsors, along with Senator Lay and Grassley, to provide $175 million to go after those guys who committed the fraud.
Can I ask kind of a broader question? Senator,
sure.
You know, we had the flash crash a week ago, and still nobody really knows what went on. Do people in Washington appreciate that the statements that the United States has we always used to be able to say with complete confidence, the United States has the highest quality and most transparent markets in the world.
Right.
Do people in Washington realize that it's very difficult to say that anymore?
By the way, absolutely. And if you go back, I'll send you my speeches if you want to read them, because I said exactly the same thing. We've gone from 2 markets that were regulated, where we had the obligation to keep a fair and orderly market, to 50 markets. Many of them are not regulated, and we don't know what's going on. Even, you know, dark pools is a wonderful name. High-frequency trading, we are not tagging our trades. We do not know on many of those trades who the customer is, what time is. We're going to destroy this thing, and we need Wall Street's help to work this thing out, and we're not getting it. We need people to sit with us and say, okay, what should we be doing about high-frequency trading? How should we deal with this? How do we make it more transparent? How do we make it so that we can regulate it? Because we've seen what happens when we have no regulation.
Right.
I want to avoid over-regulation. If we have another meltdown, like not worse than May 6th, but a major meltdown, then Congress will come in and really start regulating, and that will not be good for me, that will not be good for you, that will not be good for the market, that will not be good for anything. So we have got to get in there and do these preventive things. Far too often, everything we talk about is, you know, what are we going to be doing once we get in trouble? And you know from following these things, just like what's going on in Greece now, once you allow Greece to do what they did, trying to straighten it out now is a nightmare.
Yeah, you were right about that. It is a mess. Senator, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
When we come back this morning, the big picture on the debt threat and how it could impact the economic recovery, plus the correction course. This 10% pullback is now official. What are the